Food processing facility sanitation is an integral part of good manufacturing practices. Effective sanitation aids in ensuring the wholesomeness, safety, and quality of shell eggs. The negative impacts on food safety and egg quality are a result of microbial growth. Research has shown that ineffective cleaning and sanitation practices or programs can lead to reduced quality duration or potential product contamination. Residual microorganisms can lead to egg spoilage or foodborne illness. Most of this training series will focus on the United States Department of Agriculture Agricultural Marketing Service pre-operational sanitation inspection expectations. However, remember that the Food and Drug Administration has oversight of consumer shell eggs in the United States as stated in 21 CFR 117. Additionally, customers, accrediting organizations, such as Safe Quality Food, British Retail Consortium Global Standard, and others, as well as state and local regulatory agencies, may have additional facility sanitation expectations that can impact your facility. AMS sanitation requirements are meant to protect the integrity of the USDA grade mark by requiring additional sanitation expectations at facilities that utilize AMS voluntary grading services. To meet these goals, AMS inspectors will assess for voluntary grading program requirements during the pre-operational sanitation inspection and throughout processing operations by utilizing organoleptic inspection assessments. While AMS may review microbial test results as part of certain export programs, AMS does not conduct nor require swabbing or biological testing during routine sanitation assessments. So what is organoleptic inspection? Organoleptic inspection assessments include sight, smell, and touch. However, microbial growth will not always be seen, smelled, or felt. Critical areas are defined as equipment with potential surface contact with eggs or come in contact with wash water or air blown to dry the eggs. Non-critical areas are defined as areas that are not likely to imminently affect product quality. Non-critical does not mean it is not important. Non-critical unsatisfactory conditions should be addressed after the processing line has been started, unless unable to safely do so during processing.
In this module, the critical and non-critical areas of packer systems present on the processing line will be identified and discussed. Packer systems not only place eggs into cartons or flats, but package, stamp, and transport cartons to case packing area. Due to the complexity of packer systems, sanitation expectations will be covered in 2 modules. Additionally, examples will be used to illustrate the satisfactory and unsatisfactory condition of various components associated with packer systems. Egg processing facilities shall be thoroughly cleaned at the end of each operating day. The term reasonably clean is applied during the egg processing shift to indicate that equipment and processing areas are maintained with minimum egg meat accumulation. More explanation of these terms is presented in the introduction module. During this module, specific manufacturers will be mentioned merely to highlight packer systems unique to processing lines and how these systems are addressed during pre-operational sanitation inspections. In order for equipment cleanliness to be properly assessed, USDA AMS graders should be aware of the access and viewpoints for egg packer systems. The various models of egg packers have different access locations on the machine for viewing egg packer systems. All portions of egg packer systems must be available and accessible for assessment during pre-operational sanitation inspection. The packer systems must be cleaned each day prior to processing. The egg packer systems are composed of multiple components and parts that make cleaning and assessment difficult. This complexity requires the division of the egg packer system into sections that will be explored over 2 modules. This module covers the lower portion, while the other module will cover the upper portion. The lower portion of the packer lane primarily separates and moves the individual packages toward egg placement and the case packing area. In general, most items in the lower portion of the packer lane are non-contact components and thus non-critical. Exceptions to this include egg stampers or egg sensors for certain types of carton closers when present. Remember that egregious or recurring unsatisfactory conditions of a non-critical element can become critical. This begins with the denester separating individual cartons or flats and preparing them to be filled with eggs. While different machines may perform the denesting function differently, the general function is the same. Once the packaging leaves the denester, it is pushed along the carton bed by the pusher chain assembly. The carton pushers will guide the packaging through the packing of eggs, egg and carton stamping, and the closing of the carton before transitioning the packaging onto the incline takeaway belt. Along the carton bed, there can be a variety of sensors. The carton detection sensor ensures packaging material is present before depositing eggs. Missing egg sensors ensure cartons are full before closing. The open carton sensor determines if cartons are properly closed before moving to carton marking. Information including pack date, expiration date, and plant information may be applied either before the eggs are placed in the packaging or after the package is closed. Traditional stampers apply information to the egg package just before eggs are loaded. Inkjet printers have 2 separate components: the console with ink reservoirs and the print head. They may be located in the same vicinity on the line, or the console may be located separately from the print head. Ink staining on equipment around the inkjet print heads without additional buildup of dirt or grime would not be considered an unsatisfactory sanitation finding. Egg stampers or printers may be used to mark individual eggs. While rubber membrane and roller type stampers are usually located along the packer lane after the eggs are packed, inkjet egg printers may be located at various spaces throughout the line, such as this one that is mounted above the egg carriage system. Carton closing systems usually consist of components that fold the lower flap of the carton from below and close the top of the carton from above. As cartons move into the closing area, needle finger assemblies hold the carton in place while the tucker fingers push the lower flap into position. From the opposite side, the lid raiser arm lifts the lid into position for the lid close bar. The openings and the carton bed for the needle finger and tucker finger assemblies can become a reservoir for egg meat and shell when eggs are broken on the lower part of the packing lane and pushed along the carton bed. Routine cleaning and daily assessment of the internal components of the packing lane, especially under openings in the carton bed, should be conducted. USDA graders should require lane side panels or access ports to be removed routinely for a thorough inspection of the internal components. The takeaway belt or rollers transfer the packaged eggs towards the case packing area. In addition to the rollers or belt, drive chains and or motors should be kept free of the buildup of dust, grime, and other debris. The takeaway lane may also have a utility shelf at the end that should be cleaned daily. This diamond denester appears to be satisfactorily clean in a non-critical area. A few sparse pieces of foam or pulp carton material is not cause for an unsatisfactory finding. Here we see MOBA denester pins. On closer inspection, the pins are mostly covered in a fine residual dust from the packaging material. This should have been wiped clean during sanitation procedures. This would be an unsatisfactory, non-critical finding. Here is a view of a thoroughly cleaned packer bed and carton pusher assembly. This is a satisfactory finding on a non-critical area. For packers that use inkjets to apply dates to carton, some residual ink staining may occur on the packer bed. Ink staining would not be cause for an unsatisfactory finding unless there is severe buildup with additional foreign material. This example would be a satisfactory finding of a non-critical area. Inspection of this packer bed shows there is residual egg meat on the flat surfaces of the bed, the carton pusher, and drive chain, as well as in the guide track. While this is a non-critical area, the severity seen here would warrant a critical finding and require corrective action before processing began. Here we see laser egg sensors that are mounted above the carton bed. These are satisfactorily clean. This would be a satisfactory, non-critical finding. The egg sensors seen here come in direct contact with eggs in packaging and are therefore critical sanitation items. From the image seen here, these have been satisfactorily clean. However, such sensors must be assessed from both sides for an accurate determination. Carton sensors may be mounted on the side rails of the packer beds. This sensor is satisfactorily cleaned and non-critical. This carton sensor is beginning to show buildup on wiring and external housing of the unit. However, it is not significant enough to be deemed unsatisfactory in the non-critical area. Here we see egg sensors that have a buildup of grime and foreign material. This would be an unsatisfactory finding on a non-critical item. Since this unit is mounted above the movement of the eggs and packaging material, if the buildup becomes significant enough to warrant concern of flaking or falling onto eggs and packaging material, it would be elevated to a critical finding and must be cleaned before processing begins. When assessing inkjet printers, some will have the console and print head mounted in close proximity as seen here. Both are non-critical sanitation items. The console, conduit, and print head seen here appear to be satisfactorily clean. When print heads are located under the packing head, the console must be placed and assessed in a separate area. Here we see two consoles that are satisfactorily clean. While the print head is satisfactorily clean, the mounting bracket seen here has a buildup of grime and debris. This would be an unsatisfactory finding in a non-critical area. The print head, mounting harness, and electrical components for this inkjet printer are all satisfactorily clean. Here we see a view of a carton stamper. All the components of the stamper appear to be satisfactorily clean. Ink staining on equipment around the stamper without the buildup of dirt and grime would not be considered unsatisfactory. This also applies to belts around areas where stamping and inking take place. These images of individual egg printers show two different styles of printers that have both been satisfactorily cleaned. Certain printers may have critical components if they directly contact the egg. This is an image of an egg closing system on a newer machine that has all components visible for assessment. The needle fingers, tucker fingers, lid raiser, and closing bar are all satisfactorily clean and free of any debris or egg meat. This is how each closing system should appear every day for pre-operational sanitation inspection. This is a satisfactory finding on the non-critical components of the carton closing system. This is the carton closing system on a legacy egg grater. All of the system components visible here are satisfactorily clean, showing that thorough cleaning can be accomplished even on well-used and maintained equipment. The carton closing system has a high risk of soiling system components under the egg packer lane due to the openings in the packer bed. Care should be taken to ensure all egg materials are cleaned from the packer bed and internal area below the packer bed. Inspection through this lid riser port shows no evidence of residual egg meat or debris on the components beneath. This would be a satisfactory finding of a non-critical area. In this image, not only do we see that the carton pusher chain assembly is soiled and unsatisfactory, we also see that egg meat and debris has accumulated on both the tucker finger and needle finger, as well as lower mounting components. This is an unsatisfactory finding in a non-critical area. In addition to inspecting the top surface of the packer bed, inspection should also assess internal components which are located beneath the packer bed. Closer inspection of the carton closer assembly from beneath reveals egg meat and other debris has accumulated on the components. This would be an unsatisfactory finding in a non-critical area. Another view of the internal component of a carton closing system shows a more egregious amount of buildup. Proper sanitation procedures and pre-operational sanitation inspection should have prevented accumulation to this level. While this is an unsatisfactory, non-critical finding, if this was not addressed during the immediately subsequent sanitation operation, this would be elevated to critical and prevent processing from beginning until corrected. This picture of a non-critical fiber belt shows a well-worn belt that is satisfactorily clean. Fraying, scratches, or discoloration should not be cause for an unsatisfactory finding as long as there is no buildup or foreign material on the belt. The roller at the end of the line does have residual egg meat and buildup between the framing and the roller. This is cause for an unsatisfactory, non-critical finding of this area. Further inspection should include the underside of the takeaway belt. Here we see residual egg meat on the supporting structures. This would be an unsatisfactory, non-critical finding. Another style of takeaway belt has individual rollers that transport the packaged egg. This takeaway belt has been satisfactorily clean. Yet another style of takeaway belt uses plastic linkages to form the belt. This belt looks to be free of debris, foreign material, and egg residue and is a satisfactory finding. Inspection of the underside of the linkage belt finds remaining egg meat on the belt, the edge of the pan, as well as the framework. This would be an unsatisfactory, non-critical finding for this takeaway belt. At the end of the takeaway belt, we see the utility table as well as the drip trays under the belt. These are satisfactorily clean in a non-critical area. In addition to the direct egg and package flow on the packer, other components such as framing, bracing, feet, and wiring should be assessed. The side panel of this packer has been removed for assessment. All components have been satisfactorily clean and free of all foreign material. This is a satisfactory finding of a non-critical area. While the metal framework of the packer shown here appears to be satisfactory, the wiring has begun to accumulate grime and debris. Care should be taken to ensure additional accumulation does not occur. Otherwise, it would become an unsatisfactory condition. As seen here, this is satisfactory non-critical. Here we see additional panels removed for assessment of the packer. Periodic removal of panels is required for thorough assessment of the packer area. For questions regarding the frequency of thorough packer assessment, you should contact the AMS supervisor. For components in areas that require lubrication, grease is expected to be on these components and should not be considered unsatisfactory unless the grease has attracted foreign material and debris. This chain, bearing, and gear would be considered satisfactory in a non-critical area. When grime, debris, and egg meat accumulate on internal components of the packer, it is cause for an unsatisfactory finding in a non-critical area. When buildup becomes egregious, such as here, the finding would be elevated to critical and must be cleaned before production begins. Here we see feet and bracing that have been satisfactorily cleaned in a non-critical area. There are many styles and configurations for egg packer systems. It is important to familiarize yourself with each egg processing system you encounter to ensure the packer system is effectively evaluated before processing begins each day. Keep in mind, in any system, egg contact areas and associated components are critical. More information on the egg packer system will be presented in a subsequent module.